Thank you all. So this is the third webinar of the series. And we hope that not only you're enjoying it, but that you are getting a lot out of it and telling your educator colleagues as well. Today is Teaching Digital Verification to Spark News Literacy Learning. And again, we are so grateful to Smart News for making these possible with their support. So much appreciated. We have one session left next week, Understanding Bias. So I hope you'll be able to join us for that as well. Okay. So just as a reminder, chat in the chat window, make sure that you are sending it to either all panelists if you want it just for us, or panelists and attendees. And make sure you add your questions to the Q&A window. That way we'll be able to export all the questions and add it to our resource folder at the end. All right, so here we are. Today we are joined by Peter Adams. So go ahead, Peter, take it away.
Great, thanks, Miriam. Hi, everybody. My name is Peter Adams, if we haven't met. I head up the education team here at NLP, and we'll be walking you through this topic here today, teaching digital verification to spark news literacy learning. I'm going to dive right in with just some quick examples of things that have gone viral in recent days, and then I'm going to circle back to these examples to help you understand how to use them in the classroom. So you've heard a lot about NLP in previous webinars, so I'm going to just jump right to it and dive in, because there's a lot to cover here today. So here's a pretty good example of a false quote meme. This is false. Eric Trump did say, "My father literally saved Christianity," among other things, in a recent radio talk show. He did not say the rest of that meme, so that is mostly false. This was tweeted, speaking of Eric Trump, by Eric Trump this morning. Two great courageous Americans, Ice Cube and 50 Cent, wearing Trump hats, except those are doctored hats. Those are not the authentic hats. These were the authentic hats from July of this year. So Eric Trump probably just fell for the fake and did a quick retweet and didn't realize. Here's another false claim, this one from Facebook, of Biden taking a knee. The claim is that he is kneeling during the national anthem, but that is false. There was no national anthem playing. Here's another meme from Facebook that's also false. This is, the assertion here is that these are Nazi salutes at a Trump rally. That's an actual picture at a Trump rally, but let's take a look at some video from that event so we can try to catch this moment to see what was actually going on.
Well, I'm kidding. When you have rallies like this, you don't forget them. Thank you, go ahead. What the hell?
So this is a 4 more years chant. And at the very end, you'll hear him reference a hangar.
We're going to put a heavy play in for Virginia. Seriously, we're going to put a heavy
at an
play
airport.
in Virginia. And I think we can win the state. Man, that crowd is big. Look at that. It goes way back to the hangar. That is
Yeah, way back to the hangar. So if you look at the original meme, they're clearly at an airport, at a hangar. This is the same event in Newport News, Virginia. And what was probably happening in that moment was a 4 more years chant. A lot of folks also had their phones raised if you really analyze the image. Back in May, this was one of the first ballot rumors having to do with the 2020 two mail-in, the claim is 2 mail-in ballots mailed to the same address. First, mail-in ballots weren't out by that time. These are not just not ballots, they're actually faux ballots, sample ballots printed out from Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, from their website. You could print those out. So they look convincing, they look like ballots, but they're actually sample ballots. And then just a picture of these two pieces of paper really don't count as evidence of voter fraud. This meme, though, went massively viral across Facebook. If you search for this today, you can still find examples of that. It's also made the jump to Pinterest. So seeing a lot of cross-platform migration between viral rumors, that can make it hard to chase them down. It makes it harder for fact checkers and platforms to corral this stuff. And I circle that phrase, make it go viral, just because it is such a red flag when someone says, this is what the powers that be don't want you to know. This is what the media doesn't want you to know. Facebook keeps deleting this. Make it go viral. Let that sink in. Those are all red flag phrases for mis and disinformation. So keep your eyes out for that. And in case you're wondering, one reason we have such a big problem with mis and disinformation online is that it's incredibly easy to produce and share. So when I found that on Pinterest, I did a search just really quickly on Pinterest for voter fraud, and I came up with tons of meme collections pushing misinformation about fraud. So it's very easy to dip into one of these collections, copy, paste into social media, and just push it out. And in fact, a lot of people think of that as a kind of civic engagement or as a kind of political activism. What it is kind of disinformation warfare, right? And it just spreads massive confusion online. So here again, this reemerged, the same picture in July, but this time about Pennsylvania, not about California. So because you can actually see, if you zoom up Allegheny County on those ballots, this one then was trying to be more believable. Here's one more recently. President Trump had a rally in Ocala, Florida on October 16th, Friday of last week. And this picture emerged saying that this was the crowd at the Ocala Trump rally. But this is out of context. This is the crowd at Ocala behind the reporter there, you can see. And just, at a glance, if you think, well, is Ocala even on the coast? Because if you look at the image, there's a big river and quite a big bridge, big body of water. Ocala is landlocked. So unless that bridge is over one of these tiny little bodies of water, that's false. In fact, the rally there was also at the airport. I think the president has taken to holding rallies at airports, in part to facilitate social distancing, but it's also very efficient. This rumor was also pushed, this photo rather, also went viral in August as a photo fake of a protest in Berlin, Germany against coronavirus restrictions there. There was a Berlin protest. It looked like that, did not look like this. This was actually a music festival in Zurich in 2018. And we'll work with that example a little bit later. There are also evidence-free viral rumors online. In fact, a lot of them, and this is something that this is false. There's absolutely no record of Amy Coney Barrett ever saying this. And here's someone who's just paired it with a background on Facebook and text, and a little fiery background, and that's it. There's no evidence, but that was enough to earn 10,000 shares and 1,500 comments at the time I screenshotted it. So this is false. There's no evidence whatsoever that Amy Coney Barrett has ever said this in a speech, in an article, in an interview. This is apparently something someone just made up. Very difficult then for fact checkers to knock down. And this is something that we've kind of taken to calling a sheer assertion. It's purely just an assertion. And I think sometimes giving students a name for different kinds of misinformation helps them understand how it works and helps them detect it. Here's another example of a sheer assertion. This one, though, is attributed to a good friend, a very reliable good friend, red flag, who just finished poll manager training. And the claim here is that according to this poll manager training, if anyone happens to write anything on your ballot before they give it to you at a poll, if a poll worker does that, it could invalidate your ballot. You should ask for a new one. That's false. There are a handful of states where poll workers actually need to write on ballots. That's why this particular piece of misinformation is so dangerous. And this is an example of a copy pasta, a piece of copy pasta, a copy paste rumor that can spread massively online. A lot of people see the very same posts coming from lots of different people and assume that it's some kind of coordinated, automated disinformation campaign, that it's the work of bots. And very often it's just a copy pasta campaign, a partisan copy pasta campaign. Here's a TikTok that went viral when President Trump was at Walter Reed Medical Center recently, getting treated for COVID-19. The assertion here is that these bikers gathered outside of Walter Reed. In fact, the next instance of the rumor you see will actually make that specific claim, but it's actually a video of an August 29th protest in Pretoria, South Africa, protesting rural crime there. Here is another example of that. These are not bikers at Walter Reed praying for President Trump, but we'll work with that example a little bit later. And here finally is another coronavirus related rumor. This from earlier in the year in April, before the pandemic really hit our shores here in the US. And the claim is that this is London and it's the army preparing for an anti-5G lockdown and a pro-Brexit protest from patriots. The person who posted this claimed to have done it in jest, but it went pretty widely viral and a lot of people took it seriously. And so that is false, and we'll work with that example here a little bit later. But that's actually a small province in Malaysia called Seliang Baru. We'll work with that here in a minute as well. So I wanted to do a quick poll, and we can maybe do this just by way of chat, unless we have the poll question up. But in the chat, if you could just answer A, B, C, or D, just give us a rough sense. How confident are you in your ability to detect and debunk this kind of viral content yourselves? So I see a lot of B's, a couple A's, a D to be honest. Thank you for your honesty. B's, a whole string of B's and C's. So people are all over the place. I'm seeing all letters, couple D's in there. Hopefully you won't be by the end of this session if you don't feel at all confident. Great, that's good to know. Thank you for that. So two big questions I want to kind of tackle today together. What can you do to verify viral content like this yourselves? And then how can you use viral content like this to engage and challenge students? So how do you bring this into the classroom? We'll be taking those two questions up. I wanted to pause here just for any questions. Miriam, I don't know if we've had any questions already in the Q&A, but I'd be happy to take some before I pivot into the digital verification skills portion of the session.
We don't have any open questions. There were a couple that were already answered, and yeah, we're good to go.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to focus on 5 specific skills and tools in this session. I've just called them skills here. So we'll talk about lateral reading, web archivers using sort of archived web content, something that we tend to call critical observation, based largely on the work of First Draft, a journalist training organization, reverse image search, which some of you may be familiar with, and then just some basic geolocation today. And if you, hopefully by the end of this session, you'll be able to see how you can create everything from quick interventions like do nows and bell ringers using any of these skills, all the way up to more substantive kind of pathways that require students to engage 2 or 3 or 4 of these skills in sequence. So first, lateral reading. And lateral reading is a term that was introduced along with the term click restraint, which we'll talk about in a moment, by Sam Weinberg and Sarah McGrew at the Stanford University Graduate School of Education. If you joined us in session 1, my colleague John Silva talked about lateral reading a bit there. So if you're interested in the paper, in the work and the studies that introduce these terms, you can find them on Stanford's website if you search Weinberg and McGrew. But also this image, when you get the slides, is hyperlinked. So when you get the PDF version of the slides, much of the tools, many of the tools and a lot of the content in here is hyperlinked to the source, just so you're aware. So let's take this rumor, for example, the poll worker rumor that we just talked about. Again, lots of iterations of this circulated on Facebook. I assume if you searched Facebook for a snippet of this text, you would still come up with lots of them. People sharing these kinds of things, and very well intentioned. They want people to have accurate information. They don't want their friends and family's ballots to get invalidated for some reason, but it spreads massive confusion. And you can imagine long lines already happening at polling places, but people arguing with poll workers who have to write on their ballots, and a lot of misunderstanding. So things like this are not benign, right? They are actually potentially highly problematic and cost people real time, and also dissuade people from voting if they slow down ballot polling locations across the country. So let's take a look again. That's false. And so a lateral reading just involves something you're all familiar with, just a regular web search. And as you all know, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 tries, trying one set of search terms and then another to come up with different results. So for this lateral search, I just searched a couple snippets of the text here. So just finished poll manager training, write anything on your ballot. And right away, if I exercise some click restraint, that's the other term here. So I'm looking for links. I'm looking for websites rather that I know are standards-based and verified, that I'm familiar with.
Hey, Peter.
Yes.
There seems to be a connectivity issue. The slides are a bit blurry,
Oh, no.
and participants have not been able to read it. So I don't know if there's a. It could be a Zoom thing. Yeah. Let's see what we can do here. Give us a sec.
Yep,
thanks for pointing it out, everyone.
Did it just get blurry?
With this slide.
Oh, I see. Just with the video? Is it just this?
That too, yeah. It's been blurry, Laura says.
Okay, 1 second.
All the recent slides, okay. Well, stay tuned, everyone. Oh, yeah, my bird.
Great. All right. All right, I stopped some streaming happening in the other room. Pandemic bandwidth issues. Let's see if this gets better. It could just be the video share, and if that's the case, we'll figure out a way to get these videos shared with you. So I apologize. I'll just narrate what's happening here on screen. So I'm just doing a Google search for the phrase "just finished poll manager training, write anything on your ballot," and just evaluating the results here. So there's a link from PolitiFact. There's some local news links with snippets, and the preview text has some snippets that show me that they're engaging with this same viral rumor. And here's the link at Snopes. Snopes calls it a baseless claim. They've also clearly labeled it false. And a key point to make with any fact-checking organization is that reputable fact-checking organizations don't just say something's false because we say so. They actually show you how they know it's false. So they share their work and show that very clearly. So you don't have to take Snopes' word for it. They actually have interviews they did that are on the record. They attribute that to sources. They often link to documents or previous versions of a photo that have been published online. The same is true for PolitiFact or Lead Stories or other reputable fact-checking organizations. So some related skills and concepts to lateral reading, and hopefully this is clearer now. Miriam, is this looking good?
It's still a bit blurry, but at least the text is larger. It's easier to make it out. Yeah, definitely improved.
Okay. Sorry about that. It's clear for me, obviously, but.
Peter, if you stopped your video, would that make a difference?
Might. Better?
Not yet. All right, somebody is suggesting a refresh. And somebody else suggested stopping the share and starting over again.
Sure, I'll stop the share and try again here. Sorry about this. Oops, 1 second. How's that?
Hey, look at that. Nice.
Good?
Yep.
All
Fantastic.
Right. All right.
Woo. Go team. Absolutely. Thank you.
Whoever suggested that. All right, great. So here are some related skills and concepts to that lateral reading skill that I just introduced. And again, this is based on research that found that young people especially tend to engage in what Weinberg and McCrew would call vertical reading, or drilling down on the actual page itself. So looking for an answer on Facebook, or if you're trying to evaluate a dubious website, to go to the About section or to other places on that same site instead of getting off of that site and doing a search, what they call laterally. So hence the term lateral reading. Some related skills and concepts that I find are really helpful to introduce to students. And yes, Tiana's right. This is what we taught students for years, right? Go to the About section, look at the domain. Is it a .gov? Is it a .com? Is it a .org? The web obviously has moved way beyond that. Online information, digital information has moved far beyond that. So they do what we taught them to do. Very good point. But we need to teach them, we need to update our teaching and teach them to read laterally. That's often the first thing that professional fact checkers do, and it's often the fastest path to an answer. So some related skills and concepts to lateral reading, just teaching students basic sort of web literacy, basic shortcuts. Control-T to open a new tab if they know the shortcut. Of course, if they're on their phone, they know how to open multiple applications on their phone. Control-F to find a specific word or phrase on a web page. Doing multiple searches using multiple search terms, using basic Boolean searches, or playing with date ranges, etc. Sometimes you can use this to get to information that can be the basis of another search that will get you into a standards-based source. Exercising click restraint, so understanding that you shouldn't just click on the first link. You should look at the URLs that show up in search results, even pushing into the second or third page if you have to get to a source you know is credible. Working back to the source, so trying to figure out where this image came from. We'll do that a little bit later. And then really differentiating between standards-based content and user-generated content. Standards-based content isn't perfect. Lots of things we can interrogate about standards-based content, lots of critical discussions we can have. But in user-generated land, there are no rules, and there are generally few, if any, repercussions. And people make things up all the time in user-generated land. So helping students understand where they are in the information universe is also really helpful. One exception to the lateral reading rule. One kind of vertical reading I think is very helpful is to read the comments on something that seems a little too on the nose, that seems like it's likely to be mis or disinformation. So viral social media posts, especially if they've gone massively viral, they often have a lot of comments, and just taking a quick scroll through those comments can yield real results. Here's an example from the Facebook post that I shared. I've blown these comments up, so hopefully you can see them. Are these looking okay? Miriam, can you read these?
Yes.
Okay, great.
They're light, but
Okay, as long as everybody can. So I'm scrolling here. There's a YouTube link somebody's dropped. Here's someone noting the old European architecture. It doesn't look like Ocala to me, says this person. And we see this over and over again. No river goes through Ocala, Florida. It's landlocked. There are no cruise liners like those. So people are engaging in some debunking and verification here. Here's the same person sharing that same YouTube link, which we would want to check out if we were looking at this live. There are lots of partisan comments too. There's a really great, Trump GIF, Trump train GIF there that isn't animated because this is a screenshot. And there are two more people saying that doesn't look like Ocala, Florida, and so on. So people have already started to draw this into question, and eventually they'll start to share, if we scroll down just a little further, some links to fact checks, right? So there are some answers here, or at least some leads that can become the basis for other searches. Here's one that says this is Zurich, Switzerland in 2019. It's actually 2018. A couple of fact checkers, including Reuters, got that wrong. But these comments can be a great starting place. So that is one exception I make to the lateral reading rule. Skill number 2, web archivers. It is possible to take any URL on the web, more or less, and store a screenshot of that web page, of that URL at a specific time on a specific date. For posterity, there's lots of reasons. We'll talk about those in a minute. This morning, Eric Trump tweeted this tweet, again, remember. But when I went to look at it, here's the URL of that tweet. It was gone. He had already deleted it. Somebody said, hey, Eric, that's fake. You got to take that down. He did. So it's gone. So I went to a website called archive.today. And I just searched, and this site has a few mirrors. So there are a few domain extensions you can use, but I used today. And I just searched for that tweet, and somebody had saved it in the archive. And if I click on that, I can see the original tweet at a specific date and time, which is included at the top here. So at that time, on that date, this is what the tweet looked like, and that's how much engagement it had. All right. You can also use something called the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine. Many of you have probably used that. That's just another web archiver. This one lets you actually create an account so you can save pages to your profile so you can go back and review them. And then you can save pages on archive.today as well. So you can both save things to the archive, but you can also search the archive. It can be incredibly helpful when you're working with mis and disinformation, but it can also be helpful in the classroom in other ways, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Google also caches web pages periodically. So Google actually cached Eric Trump's tweet early this morning when it had less engagement, lower engagement numbers at the bottom there, but this is the Google cache image as well. So if you search the copy of the tweet, you can come up with the Google cached version. If you drop down that little caret, you will view the cached version. That's the version that Google's algorithm saved as it was crawling the web. Web archivers, they do a number of things for you. They can give you an authoritative snapshot of what a URL looked like at a particular moment, a date and time. Archived web pages have held up in courts of law. You can save examples that you want to use later, that you're afraid are going to change later or be deleted later. So if you want students to analyze a viral rumor like the Eric Trump tweet and he might delete it, create an archive of it so you have it. You can also use archived links to avoid driving students or driving traffic in general to sites that are nefarious or who you don't want to assist with revenue. They don't get the traffic, the archiver does. And then you can also document problematic content. So helping students understand the role that they have to play when they see something that should be saved can also be really important. They should just habitually say, hey, I'm going to create an archive of this just in case no one's seen it, because it could change or go away at any time. And then obviously, as I mentioned, you can search for content that's been deleted or changed. And then a lot of people save URLs over time to get a snapshot of, say, engagement numbers on social media or the time it was deleted, or it gives you at least a time window between when it was live and when it was deleted. So things like that. I'm going to cover one more skill and then we'll pause for more questions about these first 3 skills. And the third is just something, again, that we call critical observation, building on the work of First Draft. I don't know if anyone's heard of First Draft. They have some amazing resources on their website at firstdraft.org, including trainings. And again, most of these trainings are built for journalists and helping journalists sort of up their digital verification games. But they have a lot of good uses in the classroom, I think. And then they have some training modules for the general public as well. And they're a great resource. So they have something called the Observation Challenge. I think they built a couple of these. This is one of their first ones. So let's just do this together. The goal here is just to use your eyes and your brain to try to name the country. So let's just think out loud in the chat. Look at the photo, look for clues and cues in the photo. Where do your eyes go? Think out loud. What are you looking at and what might give you a hint as to what country this photo is from? Where did this event take place? Yeah, so there's a Palestinian flag in the center. A lot of people saying Gaza because you can see Gaza. There are flags on the street. Eileen says France based on the language and architecture. So Eileen's moving quick. Fiona's also Tara, also. Looks like Libyan flags, maybe. Names of shops. It's hard to see the language on the buildings, correct? Even if we magnified those, it does look like a European city. Nadine is right. This looks like Western European architecture. So yeah, Joe Patrick says it looks like Paris. Our goal here is to name the country, and this is France. And so you all pretty much nailed that one. There is, French here in the background on advertisements. So even though this is a protest with the word Gaza here in the center, this placard is even written in French. There's one more hint. I don't think anyone, traffic lights look like European style traffic lights. So those are exactly the kind of details that are important to notice. Architecture, and also how people are dressed. Heather pointed that out. It does not get that cold, generally speaking, in the Middle East to wear heavy clothes and scarves in the middle of the day. Let's try one more of these. And again, just using your eyes, call out the details in the chat that you would look at, things that could help you name the city. Yep, license plates. Somebody's already said, is this a Chinatown? San Francisco. Tara says New York. Tara, why New York? Why San Francisco? The cars. The style of cars, yes, the license plates. There's a law office in English, signs in many languages. There's a phone number. Can anybody get an area code off the phone number? Gina's saying New York due to the cars and signs. Tia's saying it's kind of flat for New York, for San Francisco. Oh, it's a blur. Sorry, Margie, about that. Yeah, the area code actually for me anyway, so, and again, this is blurry from the share. You can see here on the orange awning to the right, 212. And so you can actually start to pick out 212s on all of these signs, and that's New York City. We could actually just do now a lateral search for the law office of David A. Breeden and come up with the exact location. Yeah, and I'm sorry about the blurriness. I can stop and start my share one more time here and hopefully solve that again. All right, hopefully this is a little better moving forward. So I made a little checklist, a lot of the things that you all sort of mentioned, looking at architecture, looking at features of the landscape, looking at how people are dressed or other indications of climate and weather, any visible text you can see, business names, phone numbers, street names, any signs, especially municipal signs, the sides of cabs, the sides of buses, sides of garbage trucks, any distinctive buildings, license plates, other distinctive details. So if we look back again at this Selyang Baru exercise, I'd love for you all to, again, in the chat, assuming you can see this, and I'm hoping you can. Give me just a second here to try to get my chat box open. Great. Can you all see this video? Can you tell me? Yeah, Megan said she didn't think it was London the first time she saw it. What are you noticing here in the video? If you're evaluating the claim, it's London. It's too open. Let's look at this video one more time. It's a quick pan. Yeah, there are mountains in the background, big hills in the background. Definitely not England, right? So we can rule out London just using critical observation in this case. It doesn't tell us where it is, but the large trucks, we could also see what side of the road folks are driving on. But the hills in the background are the distinctive feature, I think, in this one. That gives it away, at least that it's not London. Again, as I mentioned, even especially if you control plus up on some of this stuff or zoom up or pinch up on your phones, it enhances your ability to critically evaluate stuff just based on observation. So again, you can read Allegheny County Board of Elections, or maybe you can't because this is blurry, but for me, I can read Allegheny County Board of Elections on that example. You can also make these yourselves. So it does not have to be misinformation, right? You don't have to have a piece of misinformation to teach students how to do this. Here's a picture I took just walking my dog. And so what we want students to do, yeah, that is Andersonville. Good job, Vicky's a pro or familiar with Andersonville. So we want students to see an image like this and for their brains to do that. When they're in critical observation mode, to just say there are distinctive features on that building in the background. There's a partial business name, there's a garbage truck, there's a license plate, there's a cab company, there's a bus route, and then there's a business name, right? And if you get a business name, that's gold. And that's where you can start to combine two skills together. So critical observation plus a quick lateral search can give you an exact address, if that makes sense. So then we can go to that address, drop in Google Maps, and just confirm that's our location. So those are my first three skills. And I would love, yeah, there did used to be a Google game where you could do that as well. So I would love to know if anyone has any questions so far. We've got 2 skills left and a few examples to go through, and then I want to chat further with you all and answer your questions about this topic.
We do have a couple of questions in here. When you use lateral reading, this question is from Karat. When you use lateral reading, what criteria for web checks do you use?
Sure. I think the easiest thing to do is to teach students, what a standards-based source is, to help them understand that, for example, legitimate news organizations have standards. Government agencies, depending on the kind of information you're looking for, often have verified information about very specific subjects like data. So you're looking for, sites that you recognize, right? And if you don't recognize anything but think something might be legitimate, you might engage in a kind of secondary lateral search about that source to see if it's a legitimate news outlet, for example, or a credible source, if that makes sense. But I think also broadening students' repertoire of standards-based sources, the standards-based sources with which they're familiar, is really important work as well.
Okay, this is a great roll into the next question from
Sure.
Heather. Isn't the challenge here enough educational background to know what is a reputable fact-checking organization?
Yep, there's also a international fact-checking network that's run by the Poynter in out of Florida. I'll show you a link to that, to their website. They've come up with a list of standards for fact checkers. Yeah, the Poynter's International Fact Checking Network. I have a link to that later in the deck. They sign on fact checking organizations to join IFCN. To join that, they have to sign on to a set of standards. You can also just observe, do they correct errors? Are they accountable? Are they transparent? Do they make errors? When they make an error, do they just delete the whole page or do they correct it? And so on. So it's pretty straightforward once you start looking. Not that many folks are engaged in like false fact checking or faux fact checking, thank goodness. But that's a good place to start.
Okay. Another one here from Maria. Do children have this schema to capture distinctive features like landscape, etc.?
Yep.
Those observation.
Yeah, I think depending on the age, and you could sort of scale the examples complexity and the kinds of features and details they need to notice to get that right? So if you take a picture, if you're creating one of these for your students, take a picture with 2 street signs visible for an intersection. That's much more obvious than having to use a business name in the background or a partial phone number or something like that. So you can make these as easy or as difficult as you want, and as obvious or as abstruse as you want.
All right.
Great.
We'll have time for more Q&A at the end, folks, so keep them coming.
Great. So 2 more skills to get to. The fourth is how to do a reverse image search. Many of you probably already know how to do this, so bear with me. There are basically 3 main methods for doing a reverse image search. You can do one directly in your browser in the right-click menu. You can search by image URL. So for the most part, every image online, every photo online has its own unique URL. And when the web page sort of queries that or pulls it from the server, it has its own address. So you can right-click on a photo and copy that address, or you can do it by local file. So you can right click and save that photo to your actual computer, which I'm pretty sure everybody knows how to do. So let's take a look at these three methods just really quickly. I'm going to right click this image of the bridge in Zurich and just click search Google for image. Now that works if you're in Chrome, and there are also browser extensions and other browsers that add that option to your right click menu. And right away, I start to see fact checks from standards-based news outlets. I see the photo, and what that did is it searched the web for that photo. So just like you can search the web for terms, you can search the web for pixel patterns or digital photos. Here's one, Agence France Presse fact check site, factcheck.afp.com, a great fact-checking organization and news organization. And there's our exact photo. This is an instance of it going viral in August, having to do with that Berlin protest that somebody was trying to exaggerate. And again, diving into the whys with students, like why would someone want to do this? Why would they want to exaggerate how big a protest was, is also a great sort of entree into a discussion about politics, or how people try to sort of boost or minimize support for a particular policy or event online or a candidate. Yeah, Margie, if you copy an image, if it has metadata, you can save metadata with it. So many social media sites, almost all of them, strip out metadata when you upload an image, just so that your geolocation, your camera, all the information that's embedded in a digital image is stripped away. But you can sometimes still find images with metadata in it. Let's take a look at how to do this. Same search using the image URL. So again, I'm going to right click and I'm going to go down to copy image address. This is going to copy the URL for the photo to my desktop, and in a new tab, I'm going to go to images.google.com. Click on the photo, or sorry, click on the camera. You could upload an image if you wanted to do it as a local file, but I'm going to paste my image URL here. It's very long, and click search by image, and I get to the same results that way. Actually, some different results depending on the method, so that some of these results can be slightly different. And let's take a look at what it looks like to save by local file. Oops, sorry, I've got my slides all wrong here. They all look alike. There are other search engines that you can use as well, other than Google. There's one called TinEye that lives at tineye.com. Yandex is a very popular Russian search engine that has a very powerful reverse image search engine. And they have different strengths. So this is something that was published by the site Domain Tools. Google is better at some things than Yandex. Yandex is really the best at faces, at human faces. And Bing is better than Google at faces, according to Domain Tools. And so you'll see this, that the results vary. So if you're really looking for something, trying different reverse search engines is important. And Tara, the images are linked in the slide deck, so you can get these there as well. There's also a great browser extension called the InVid Fake News Debunker that adds this option to your right-click menu. So if you install this browser extension, you can select the InVid option in your right-click menu and then search any number of reverse image search engines right there. It also has some great magnification tools. This is what it looks like in the Chrome store, but I think they also have a Firefox extension. And if you open up the tool, you get other tools that are in there. A keyframe tool, for example, that you can drop a video URL in and it will pull stills out of the video and then let you click those images to do reverse image searches from the video. So it's a great way to walk a video back to its source. And here are some other extensions that you can use as well. So if you just search reverse image search in your browser extension store, whatever your browser of choice is, you should find some options. You can also do reverse image searches on your phone. This is hyperlinked to this piece from PC Magazine. Here's an example of one particular tool in the Apple App Store or in Google Play. you can play with those as well. Increasingly, obviously, helping students do these kinds of things on their phones is an important skill for them to have. So let's look at what reverse image search looks like in action here. In this case, I'm going to use this Biden kneeling photo, but in Facebook, sorry, let me go back. In this Facebook image, I don't have the option to search directly from my right-click menu. Facebook, sometimes social media platforms kind of interfere with your ability to search for photos off of the platform. Sometimes it works for me on Facebook, other times not. And this image was kind of baked into a meme, so that might have had something to do with it. So I'm just going to snip it out and do a screenshot. I just use Windows native snipping tool. If you're a Windows user, there is a partial screenshot tool for Mac. And after I save that partial screenshot, I'm going to upload it here to Google Images. And this is the third way to do a reverse image search. So now I get all kinds of pictures of this event, and I can get to coverage from the Miami Herald and find out that this was Joe Biden campaigning in Little Haiti in Miami. There are the dancers that he took the photo with, the socially distanced photo with. So just some quick recap on reverse image search. There are three big methods. You can do it direct in your browser if you're using Chrome. If you can search by image URL, if you can right click and copy that, or you can save it as a local file. If you don't have the option to save as a right click, you can do a screenshot. There are lots of browser extensions and mobile apps. Not all platforms play nice with this. Sometimes, again, Facebook does not let you copy the image URL, or it strips out the image URL and doesn't give you access to it. So doing a partial screenshot, or what I like to call snipping and searching, can often be very helpful, especially if you just want to get one piece of the image. And it often gives you leads rather than definitive answers. So sometimes a reverse image search leads you, like you just saw, to a standards-based source. So I now got to the Miami Herald based just on that meme. And now I'm in standards-based land, and I can see where that was, look at photo captions, and so on. The last skill, basic geolocation. This is basically just using Google Maps. And again, First Draft has a great resource that I think can work well with students, at least the first few challenges. They're simpler challenges. So here's a screenshot of this geolocation challenge with First Draft. And the instructions are to just click on the image and you jump into Google Street View. So I'm going to do that. And the question we have to answer is how the mural ends. So it says the mural continues around the corner. Click on the image and enter the last word of this sentence. So el poder de la imaginación, what it looks like imaginación. And we're going to go around the corner. Using Google Street View, and again, Google drives streets at random times all around the world and captures what they look like. Infinitos is the answer to this particular challenge. You don't have to use First Draft's challenge. You could make your own. We can also look at what the September 2008, the November 2009 capture looked like, the May 2012, if you go up here in the upper left corner. So sometime between May 2012 and November 2013, that mural was painted, but by November 2018, it was gone. So fact checkers use these timed captures, right, to look at how details have changed. Graffiti appears and disappears, stores get rehabbed, the colors of awnings change, things like that. So it's helpful to try to set a time window or a time parameter using Google Street View. So a lot of people know how to use Google Street View. I think fewer people understand that they can actually go back and look at previous captures in Street View. So just for fun, we can start with this Biden kneeling meme, do a little lateral reading. So we got to the Miami Herald, right? And once we read into the Miami Herald coverage of the event, we find out it was at the Little Haiti Cultural Center. We could do some critical observation and say, well, how do we know this is the same event? Use a little critical observation. How do we know this isn't a different event than the one in the meme? Anyone with a critical eye? How do I know this is the very same event? The clothing, right? They could have done a second event at Little Haiti. The mural is one clue, but Jill's in the same dress, good point, and he's wearing the same tie, same shirt, highly unlikely to be a separate event, right? They'd have to do a second event in the same location with the same clothing. So let's geolocate that. And I'm just going to right click the phrase Little Haiti Cultural Center and do a search right out of my browser. Jump into Google Maps and go take a look and just confirm without a shadow of a doubt that that was the location. Once you give Google a second to load, or maybe it's my slow system, you'll get a little orange figurine in the bottom right corner. I'm going to grab that figure. And when you hold the figure over the map, everything that's captured in Street View lights up in blue. I'm going to drop them in. And just take a look around, get my bearings, figure out where the cultural center is. Turn around here. And it's going to be up here on our right. You'll see our mural. And so once students have confirmed this, or maybe the challenge is find the cultural center in Google Street Maps or Street View. And once they do that, maybe the bonus question is, okay, between what dates was that red awning built? Now this just requires them to go in and use that previous capture tool. So I'm going to go up in the upper left corner and look at previous captures of this location. This was being built in December 2007 when Google captured it. Here it is in February 2019, June 2018, the awning's there, May 2017, the awning's there. Let's take a look at what it looked like in May. June 2016, no awning. So sometime between May 2017, June 2016 and May 2017, that second piece was built. That can be helpful to students as fact checkers, but you don't have to use a piece of misinformation necessarily to drive that home. So that's an example of how I can pair and string three of these skills together into a single example, just kind of like a mini pathway to learn digital verification. We could also do something like this, where we start with critical observation that requires then lateral reading to get to the next question. Then you construct a question that requires reverse image search, and you end with a question that requires them to use geolocation tools. Hopefully I've started to provide you with an answer to that first question. You can build digital verification challenges and pathways to really engage and challenge students. I also think misinformation is a great kind of side door into current events and political issues that you might want to talk about. So if you can get a meme about a particular event, that might be a kind of hot start or a quick way to jump into that topic and wonder, why would someone want to make up a viral rumor about this? What was going on in that photo to begin with, rather than just introduce the topic cold. So three options on just building quick challenges. You can build observation bell ringers, so just critical observation exercises like the ones we just did together earlier. You can have reverse image search races or weekly challenges. These can be pictures that you take on vacation, like this one. And then you can also build more substantive challenges and pathways. They don't have to be misinformation. So here's a final example. Here's a video from TikTok.
At first it was a friend.
And I'm wondering if we can geolocate this.
Kept thinking I could never live without you by my side.
So the store was Brown Thomas. Quick Google search for that store name.
So many nights
how many locations do they have?
How he did me wrong. And I grew strong.
Start with the first one.
And I learned
looks a lot like it.
How to carry on.
Let's look at the address. Jump into Google Maps. Sorry, that's a little loud. Let's just jump into Google Maps outside that department store and just confirm it's the same location, right? So it doesn't have to be a viral rumor. It doesn't have to be a piece of mis or disinformation. You can just find something that will engage students like a TikTok and just say, who can tell me where this is? Go. I mean, what an engaging way to teach geolocation, but it's a skill that actually, they can apply in really important ways. So, and then again, digital verification pathways. You can start with critical observation, get a business name, look at the comments, do some lateral reading, and then geolocate this. Now I have a business name. I can jump in to Google. Business names, again, are gold. I have a city, I have a business name, and I can get to that, jump into Google Maps and confirm, exactly where this was. So stringing these things together, helping students understand how these skills fit together is a really key skill. So with that, at the end of the deck, there are some resources that for all of you and links to some verification resources, and we'll share some of these in follow-up. We'll also share a copy of the slides in follow-up. I know we just have a couple minutes left for Q&A, but Miriam, if you want to jump in here and highlight some questions for me, I will leave this slide up with 9 of the fact-checking organizations who are all signatories of that IFCN network, and let folks check out the rest of the resources kind of on their own.
Great.
Any questions we can tackle real quick?
Yeah, we have a really great one from Stacy, and I know we'll dive into this topic a little bit more next week as well, but
Yep.
this is less about engagement with students and more about engaging with other adults. How do you have a conversation with a person who seems to be blind to anything other than their own opinion? In other words, I can fact check, present evidence, but they are responding with emotion and think,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, yes.
Yeah, so that's a kind of, these differences in epistemology. I mean, often when people are, and there's been a lot of sort of disinformation about fact checkers, it's sort of like gaming the refs, right? To say that, oh, Snopes, don't believe Snopes, I'm not even going to look at that link. You can actually just go into fact-checking links and pull out the evidence and share that independently. That will break through, I think, with a lot of folks to just say, look, that picture's from 2018. Sometimes responding empathetically. We have a new infographic about this too, how to talk to people about misinformation, friends and family, that we'll share in follow-up. So I think, breaking through, being empathetic, not being judgmental, and just trying to keep presenting evidence. Sometimes it takes a lot of instances though, right? Maybe 5 or 6 false things. And sometimes when people say, I don't believe you, never mind, I know I'm right, you're still breaking through on some level, and they're still going to sort of be more cautious in the future. At least that's what I find.
Okay, so somebody, Ellie mentioned that the suggested Twitter follows are too blurry to read.
Okay, Bill, sorry about that. I've got connection issues apparently, but they will be in the deck. There are six accounts on Twitter that do a lot of open source investigations work, that debunk viral photos. HoaxEye is a big one, @HoaxEye, all one word. But these will be in the deck that we share. So I apologize for the blurry slides. Thanks, Jordan.
Great. Well, that was the last question. Although if anybody has anything else, feel free to type it in the Q&A.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to hang out. Sorry, I know we're at the end of our time, so some of you may have to jump.
The Newslit PD resources. So we posted the Q&A answers from our first webinar. We're working on webinar 2. We will also get to webinar 3 soon. And keep providing you guys with as much as we can.
Yeah, I think in that resource folder is our master list of open source investigation, digital verification resources as well. And again, some resources from NLP. I know we've talked about those in previous sessions, so we do appreciate all your time. Miriam, do you want to give a quick shout out on Newslit Camp Miami this Friday?
I would love to.
Please do.
So all this and more. We are going to be joined by 4 journalists in Miami. Sorry, here, let me, okay, hi everybody. Newslit Camp, so picture most of a day just absorbing information, learning with each other, connecting with journalists on some pretty critical topics. One, for example, is, how do you have these conversations with a polarized public about politics? We're going to be talking about bias, and we're going to be doing a lot of more fact checking. If you are a Miami educator or know somebody, have a relative that lives down there that has a teacher friend, please go ahead and just raise your phone to that QR code and you can get the link to send to them. And the same goes for the next slide. We have a national Newslit camp happening on December 10th, and that'll be with the Texas Tribune.
Great. All right, well, if there are no other questions, again, I'm happy to hang out. I know we're a little over time. But if anyone has any other questions, happy to hang out and chat about digital verification. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us, spending another hour with us. One more session, same time next week to talk about news media bias and sort of how to engage students around that very complex but important topic. So thank you all, and we will see you next week.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.